Our team has helped hundreds and hundreds of people move to the Twin Cities, make the Twin Cities their home, or really put in roots in the Twin Cities. And one of the most common requests for people who want to live in the city proper, right, Minneapolis or St. Paul proper, is they're looking for some level of walkability. And there's a lot of those neighborhoods in the Twin Cities, but it can get maybe a little bit overwhelming. So let's talk about it. On this channel, I made over an hour long video, which is, I think, the longest video or close to the longest video on this channel. It's all about walkability, and it's a virtual tour in the sense that I'm actually out there walking around. So if that sounds more appealing, go check that video out. It's like 2 years old, but frankly, most of that is still extremely accurate. I don't know that there's anything that I would have wished that I had taken out or wish that wasn't in there anymore. Still very, very accurate. On this video, we're diving into the map, and we're doing sort of a virtual map tour because a lot of people think that way, right? As you're searching remotely, a lot of people tend to find that they spend a lot of time looking at maps, whether it's on, a home search app or just on Google Maps or following along with our virtual showing. A lot of the people that we help say that they find themselves looking at maps and sort of thinking about the Twin Cities on like a map basis, right? Not like an actual real life basis because they're not here yet. So if that's how you think, then I think this video should be a really, really good companion for your search. So this should be a really good overview to get rid of some of the noise in the signal. If walkability is a requirement for you, then this is going to be a perfect place to start. So how I'm going to do this, it might seem a little bit weird, but I'm generally going to start in the eastern side of the metro and work toward the western side. The reality is I think Minneapolis tends to be a bit more walkable. And I think that probably the two most walkable neighborhoods are on the west side of the city or in Minneapolis proper. But there are some undeniable, just super cool spots that have a level of walkability in St. Paul. And actually, back to this real quick for the record, walkable, I'm defining as basically being able to do some errands at least, right? I think of like cafe communities where you can go to a coffee shop and that kind of thing. I don't mean like walk to a park because the truth is all of St. Paul, all of Minneapolis, you're like less than half a mile to a park. So that would just be talking about the whole metro. And so obviously you're going to have good park access throughout both of the cities. This is more about the errands, the dining spots, the restaurant. So obviously you're going to have access to park spaces, right, and green spaces and beautiful natural aspects of the metro. But this is more about the errands, the coffee shops, the commercial access above everything else. So back to the map. We're starting in St. Paul, and I would say the furthest east spot that I think of as being very, very walkable, and specifically it's known as Lower Town St. Paul. And again, we're starting on the east, working our way west, and we're starting in downtown St. Paul, specifically in a neighborhood known as Lower Town St. Paul. Google Maps gives you this red outline. Sometimes it's kind of hard to see, but it's helpful nonetheless because it basically defines like what are the proper boundaries. You'll see that this is a small area. I think a lot of downtown would qualify as walkable. And so I think for sure anywhere in downtown St. Paul, you could probably run a lot of errands. You could probably go to a lot of restaurants, but there's something particularly walkable and particularly, community oriented or like complete neighborhood feeling about Lower Town. You can see that like Highway 52 is the border, the river is the border, and then Jackson Street is the sort of southwestern border, as well as Fort Road or West 7th. It's really, really small. You have CHS Field in here and Mears Park, which is a really, really great park. CHS Field is where the St. Paul Saints play. It's a really, really fun time. It's not a huge stadium, right? Not a ton of seats, quite affordable, all things considered. And they also use it for different like winter activities and like holiday lights, things like that during the winter. It was once partly owned by Bill Murray, but I've been told that it is no longer partly owned by Bill Murray. Not that that really matters at all. And then you also have Mears Park, which is a pretty much a block wide park, a really pretty area, right? And it kind of sets up for a really lovely aesthetic here. You have these older buildings, these older brownstone buildings, right? With this scene in particular, I think it is so much of what people think is like downtown-ish, maybe even not downtown-ish if you're coming from somewhere like New York City. It might feel actually kind of suburban, or Chicago or something like that. You have this really great park space, and yeah, it really just, there's a whole vibe going on over here. And yeah, my band actually used to rehearse way over here. There was once a very, very ratty music venue over here that I saw a lot of shows at. In this building, it's now apartments, and they're pretty cool actually. It's right across from the Union Depot, and the Union Depot is like a main stop for trains, like heavy rail trains, even though what you're seeing right here is our light rail. This is the last stop on the light rail heading from St. Paul to Minneapolis, or I suppose it's the first stop on the light rail heading from St. Paul to Minneapolis, and the last stop heading from Minneapolis to St. Paul. Lowertown is also home to the European Christmas market, which is a really cute thing that the city does, or that some organizer does. Shout out to whoever organizes it. Where it's sort of basically borrowing from the classic European Christmas market with all sorts of vendors and things, and putting it into St. Paul. And one thing that I love in particular about Lowertown is the architecture. It's pretty cohesive and beautiful throughout. But another thing that I really love is the farmers market. I think it's positioned in such a useful way, especially to residents of Lowertown. It's not the biggest farmers market in the world, but it is pretty dang good. And to have that in your neighborhood proper, along with some just regular grocery stores, I think really helps to check the box of this is a truly, truly walkable neighborhood. And coming back out of the map here real quick, my name is Jesse Lynch. I run the hardest working real estate team in the game. We're called To the Twin Cities, but this YouTube channel, it's all about helping you find a place to call home in the Twin Cities. And relocations is what we do. It's what we do better than anybody else. And it's what we spend all of our time thinking about, working on videos to be helpful with, and ultimately trying to solve unique problems to the relocation process. Not necessarily problems, hurdles, just complications or, I don't know, anxieties, right? There's certainly a lot of that stuff involved. And while it might be a very novel thing for you, right, relocating to the Twin Cities, it's what we're doing every single day. So if you're interested in working with us, we would love to help you. You can go to our website, tothetwincities.com. We have a contact form there that you can fill out in 30 seconds or less, and then we'll get back in touch with you and kind of start to get the show on the road for you and get you headed in the right direction. I said this earlier, one of our biggest goals is to get rid of the noise in the signal. If you're pulling up Zillow, which is wrong all the time, if you're pulling up Zillow, you're gonna just realize oh, it's a pretty big metropolitan area. If you want to live in the city, which city, right? or are there different neighborhoods in both cities that you'd be interested in? Probably yes. And so how do you figure out what those are? We're really, really good at kind of getting down to the bottom of what it is a person is looking for out of their life here, and then helping to facilitate them finding the right place. And not just saying you should live here, right? But saying, what are you looking for? How about this? How about this? How about this? And ultimately landing on what should be the perfect place for you. That's always the goal. And statistically, people move every 5 to 7 years. Our goal is to make people not want to move, right? Our goal is to help people find the place where they go, this is it, and I'm not moving. So reach out to us, and hopefully we can help do the same for you. We are heading further west from Lower Town. Again, this is kind of known as like the whole downtown area, kind of this whole general thing right here. And then I'm going to say that the next most walkable area is what is known as Cathedral Hill. There's also like Ramsey Hill in there, and then there's also, you can see that this is not a huge area, right? So first of all, there's quite a few really great restaurants in this very, very small area. In particular, the corners of Western Avenue and Selby Avenue is a beautiful corner. I think it's kind of weird to have one of these, but I think it's one of my favorite architectural corners in all of the Twin Cities. I don't know how many people have a favorite architectural corner, but these buildings in particular, really beautiful. The tree-lined streets going down here, really beautiful. Two unbelievable spots, Nina's Coffee here and W.A. Frost & Co. Very, very cool. Recommend both of them. And if you continue to go down Selby here, you can have, really, you'll just see that there's a lot of different commercial spaces along Selby. There's bus routes and such, as it is a main thoroughfare, another little restaurant, and it's very charming in how it's laid out. It's not, overly corporate. In fact, I would say it's really quite not corporate. That's terrible English, so I apologize for that. But it's really, just truly unique, one-of-a-kind spots all throughout, all up and down Selby Avenue. And then you kind of continue to get this way. We'll go a few more blocks down here, and you'll see that there's another corner, kind of another main corner that Selby interacts with, that are just two of like the main sort of intersections, I guess would be the right word, which is Selby and Dale here. Another awesome intersection that has a lot of different things, one of which is the Mississippi Market Natural Food Co-op. I think a grocery store, especially something like a co-op, just lends itself to the walkability, lends itself to like the completeness of a neighborhood in a way that, like, as much as I love them, another coffee shop doesn't. You can see the northern boundary is I-94. Obviously, the closer you get to that, the louder it gets, for one. But then a little, you're getting a little further away from Selby Avenue. And then the southern border is Summit Avenue. I would say that's not the case. You're not getting less walkable there, because you're actually getting close to what I think is the next most walkable neighborhood, to the west anyway, which is called Summit Hill in St. Paul. Cathedral Hill and Summit Hill are two of, I think, the most beautiful neighborhoods solely in terms of architecture. I think there are other neighborhoods that certainly compete for as beautiful of neighborhoods, but probably not in terms of architecture. So in particular, you see the northern boundary of Summit Hill is Summit Avenue. I'll put the guy here on Summit Avenue, and we can just take a stroll up and down Summit. I mean, it's park-like. It is full of stunning homes and proper mansions, right? Crazy history of affluence along Summit Avenue, with some of the most just undeniably beautiful homes. A lot of churches along Summit Avenue. The governor's mansion is on Summit Avenue. Yeah, it's just such a pretty street. One of the things I really like about it in particular is that there's the bike lane pretty much all of Summit. Great place to take a bike ride in St. Paul. You can go all the way east to west on Summit as well. So back to the wide map. And obviously Summit is not particularly walkable. You can go for a nice walk, a nice bike ride, don't get me wrong, but it's 1 block away from Grand Avenue, which I think Grand Avenue is, without a doubt, one of the 2 most walkable, maybe 3 most walkable streets in all of St. Paul proper. It's kind of colloquially known as the Shops on Grand. There might be a sign somewhere that says that, but it's a huge variety, and it goes for, I don't know, several blocks, if not, in the couple of miles all along Grand. We'll take a stroll here. We'll take a little drive along Grand. Beautiful homes, a lot of multifamily along Grand, a lot of more duplexes, fourplexes, maybe 6 or 8 unit buildings, but it's not too much more than that typically, right? And most of them are brownstone that are in that, higher level, higher end multifamily like these, a 3-story, but that's probably a 12 unit, maybe 16 would be on the high end. And then you're a block from, some shops, maybe another half block from more restaurants. You've got grocery stores along Grand, including a Kowalski's. You've got gas stations, and then you've got a really cool blend of kind of classic, almost suburban fast food, fast casual spots like Chipotle or Crispin Green, and then really unique, one-of-a-kind restaurants as well. And as you look on the map here, you can see that the yellow basically implies, that it's some sort of commercial space. And then all throughout here, there's way, way less of that. In fact, it's basically none of it is zoned commercial. But there are some beautiful homes over here. A couple places of note. So you have Crocus Hill right here. Crocus Hill is a pretty famed street with really, really cool houses on it. I'm gonna kind of pop over here. You can kind of see back, through the trees and all that, how beautiful a lot of these houses are. But the thing about them, I think that makes them particularly special, is where they're situated, which is up on Crocus Hill, as the name implies. And you can't really see it on the map here, but all here, there's a really big topographical change here. And you can't really see it, obviously, on the map because it's two-dimensional, but where Grand Avenue starts to take a turn here, it starts to go downhill, and pretty quickly, actually. So Grand Hill, Summit Court, Crocus Hill, Crocus Place, they're really sitting with pretty unbelievable views over the highway, but they sit so high over the highway that you probably don't even really see it that much. And really, really lovely. There's also not a street in here that isn't beautiful. I think you would be hard-pressed to find one. Lincoln Avenue, I think, is noteworthy because it's one block off Grand, the other way from Summit. So Summit is a main through street that's used a lot. It has beautiful mansions, and it's like a bit of a statement piece for St. Paul. Grand Avenue, tons of commercial, a lot of multifamily. Lincoln Avenue, it has multifamily. It has homes that a lot of people would consider to be mansions, but they're more classically neighborhoody, if that makes any sense at all. You can see here, these are undeniably beautiful homes, tree-lined streets, a lot of 3-story homes with just unbelievable character and all that. You're one block away from the commercial aspect of Grand Avenue, but you're kind of situated on that pretty special neighborhood street. That does continue onto Goodrich, Fairmount, Osceola, Linwood, etc. But in particular, Lincoln is just a block away, so it's kind of unparalleled in its access to those things. I'm scooting out here to give you some more context. If you haven't heard me or somebody on the team say this yet, we often refer to this as the lower triangle of St. Paul. It includes multiple neighborhoods, but we often will just kind of loop that all in together. And so the next most walkable place over here, and beloved place, is Mac Groveland or McAllister Groveland. You can see it's quite a bit bigger. And I do think the walkability wanes ever so slightly through Mac Groveland as compared to Summit Hill, Cathedral Hill, and Lower Town, because it spreads out a bit more. If I were to click on restaurants, you can see that there are quite a few restaurants, and there's kind of the main corners where restaurants exist within Mac Groveland. But there are parts of Mac Groveland that are just a little bit further away from some of the walkability as compared to, the likes of Summit Hill, just because it's bigger, more than anything. But for most folks, if you're comfortable walking 6 blocks to run an errand or go to a restaurant or something like that, you should be able to live just about anywhere in Mac Groveland and be close to something that you could walk to. And there's going to be a few places of particular note where you would have a higher level of access to those things. This corner over here, Hamlin and Grand, is a really good corner for a lot of that. a lot of that access to things. Colossal Cafe, really, really good cafe. It's all basically like scratch made, like breakfast almost entirely. And then maybe a block away from there, you have the Kowalski's, which I mentioned earlier in the Summit Hill. But you just go a block down here, and you've got Kowalski's, which is a huge asset to a neighborhood. It's a really great grocery store. There's like a liquor store, wine store, etc. in there as well. And I'm a big fan of Kowalski's. We have a whole video about grocery stores on this channel and on the podcast channel. Feel free to check that out if you're curious what a Kowalski's is, but big fan over here. This Sinclair, you know, that's my cat's name, by the way. This has been in the same family for like 3 generations. Kind of cool to see that, and kind of rare in my opinion. Continuing down Grand, you see over here, Grand gets a little bit more single family-ish, a little bit less dense than it is in the Summit Hill neighborhood, and also a little bit less commercial, right? So also then a little bit less convenient, other than you hold for a few of the corners. I'm backing out to the main part of the map. Again, here's Mac Groveland. You can see here, this is a really great corner in particular. More or less, it's McAllister, College, and Grand Avenue. It's in particular, it says Cambridge Avenue. And so this corner right here, shout out to Pad Thai. Really good Thai food. And I always say this, but underpriced. I think they could charge more and nobody would bat an eye. Frattallone's, this is like a hardware store. I love to have a neighborhood hardware. I really value having a neighborhood hardware store, and they sell pretty much everything. They don't necessarily have a ton of everything. They're not Home Depot, but they have something. If you need something, any kind of tool or any kind of like fastener, they will have a few of just about everything. I go there quite often, actually. You got a butcher shop. You have places like Italian Pie Shop. Let me do that again. You have places like Italian Pie Shop, Sheesh, the French Meadow, and even Patagonia. I still think that is kind of a weird place for Patagonia, but they seem to be pulling it off. They seem to be rocking. Then you have Fairview Avenue and St. Clair. Not a huge corner, not a ton of stuff going on here, but it is nice. You got a grocery store, a Speedway. You've got Estelle, which is like a European restaurant, a tailor. Across the street from there, you've got Groveland Tap, which is a pretty beloved restaurant in the Mac Groveland area. It's been around for a very, very long time as well. Going back out to the main map, here's Mac Groveland. You'll see kind of the next little step of walkability. The next little main corner is going to be Randolph and Cleveland. Coming back out into the map, you've got kind of the next bit of commercial space is along Randolph Avenue. You've got Randolph and Cleveland, or Randolph and Fairview. And then you can see just to the south of here is the Highland Park neighborhood. I'm going to do kind of an honorable mention for Merriam Park up here, which is also kind of known as Union Park. I don't think that it's quite as walkable as some of these areas, but there is some level of walkability, and there's like a few little spots where you have quite a bit of access to things. And you can see just on the other side of Randolph is the Highland Park neighborhood, which I will get to, but we got to go north here real quick to the Union Park neighborhood, which is a pretty big neighborhood. And I would say that these kind of western parts are not quite as walkable, right? Along Marshall, pretty walkable, but then it really gets to when you're at Marshall and Snelling in particular. But it really gets to Selby and Snelling in particular is like a really helpful, useful core of this neighborhood, especially in the Southern Triangle, where you have a Whole Foods, for one, which is just a huge asset to the neighborhood, and just obviously a well-known grocery store. Across from there, you've got Neighborhood Cafe, a little coffee shop, some like vintage stores and things like that, a pizza place, and then across from Snelling, you've got a patina, which is kind of like a gift store, a bakery across from there, and like kind of a little row of vintage stores here as well. And that corner in particular is huge. Across 94, I don't think of this area as particularly walkable because it's all kind of suburban and spread out, but it certainly is. It's along University Avenue, which also has the light rail. And you can see here, there's Target, there's Cub. This area, basically Hamlin and University, this area right here is, I mean, undeniably a very handy commercial, almost suburban core. I think there's certainly room for it to grow and room for it to improve, and it certainly will be, in my opinion. I'm pretty bullish on the area on the whole. But this is a huge Target, a super Target. I mean, it's big. And then you have a Cub Foods and LA Fitness and things like that. And also just to the west of there, you have Allianz Field, which is pretty cool. It's where the Minnesota United play, a beautiful stadium. I think I get this wrong all the time, but it's modeled after the Bayern Munich stadium and just way smaller because that is a huge stadium. But anyway, cool spot, worth mentioning. And now we're going back into the Southern Triangle to what is close to the final walkable neighborhood, which is Highland Park. Highland Park is one of my favorite neighborhoods for sure. I love it here. I think it's just like a very peaceful. You can see it's kind of trapped down at the bottom, right? Down at the south. It's not really the bottom, but it's trapped at the south where there's just a little bit less access, and so it has this nice buffer from a lot of the rest of the city, which I think lends to its sort of peacefulness. Real quick shout out to Cecil's. Cecil's been around for like, I don't know, 100 years or something like that. It's a deli. Highly regarded, very, very beloved. And I think the most walkable section would be anything close to Ford Parkway here and Cleveland. I'll put the little guy, boom, right there. You can see it's a very commercial spot here and kind of suburban, right? This neighborhood in particular, there's a Panera, an Xfinity, a Bank of America, a Verizon, not like the coolest places to possibly exist in a store, but pretty dang handy. And then just across the way, you have a Patina. You have like Tiffany's, which is a pretty cool bar, restaurant, bar, and grill, I guess. Half Price Books, bookstore. There's a library just down the way down here. And then if you turn around, if we turn it around, right across from there is a little bit more, I don't know, charming. You have Tiffany's, which is a bar. It's a Packers bar. But if you don't care about sports, that doesn't matter. Half Price Books, a bookstore. I'm not sure that it's truly half price everything, but hey. Patina, another gift store. Just down the way here, one of my favorite little, like, I don't know, places in all of St. Paul. The Highland Theater and this little strip. Beautiful little strip here. There's a Centro, which is a Mexican food place, and then Vina has been around for a very long time. It's a Vietnamese spot, highly regarded. And actually, I think they've updated it a little bit since that photo. You got a tattoo spot, and right across the way from there is Quixotic Coffee, which I think I mentioned on this channel. Pretty good coffee. I like a latte extra shot if anybody is interested in getting me one. From there you have a Target, which is like a micro Target. It's more the size of like a Walgreens. Super, super helpful, right? Very nice to have in a neighborhood, especially in a neighborhood that has other things. It has a Walgreens across the way. And one of the nicer, again, kind of mainstay conveniences is a little bit further down here, another couple blocks. You have the Lunds and Byerly's, which is right here. Lunds and Byerly's is a grocery store. It's super helpful. It's nice. Some might think it's maybe a little bougie. It's a great grocery store. They have a lot of good stuff, a lot of nice like organic style products, but also you can get the staples like Cheetos or whatever, sugar cereal, stuff like that. It's not a co-op. It's just a nice grocery store. It also is home to a Lifetime Fitness, which Lifetime is among the nicest gyms in all of the Twin Cities, Crispin Green, etc. So backing out of here, I think the reality is that is the most walkable core in Highland Park. And if you live really close to that, you live in one of the most walkable little like corners of all of the Twin Cities. It's kind of crazy how complete that is because of its almost suburban feel in some of that. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Over here also, a little shout out to Lexington Parkway and Randolph, where you have like a Trader Joe's. You know, there's a couple little spots right here. And I think this could be a nice little walkable spot for some people. But I would say the cool factor of restaurants and stuff isn't quite as good right over there. There's just not quite as much of that stuff going on. And then the last place in St. Paul that I'm going to kind of call out as being particularly walkable, it's called St. Anthony Park. It's a hidden gem. And I would say in particular, I want to talk about North St. Anthony Park. That is a small area. Right? There's not a ton of houses here. There are people who will sit and wait for homes in that neighborhood, and you can wait and wait and wait, right, for the right house to come up because there's just not that many that get listed, but it's really, really, really special. South St. Anthony Park is also great. There's a place called Herbst that I went to. It's awesome. Went there with my fiance. Really enjoyed it. There's the Hampton Park Co-op, which is like a grocery store, a food co-op. That is huge and a really good asset. This is a little bit more industrial. There are some, you know, single family stuff over here. It's a little, I don't know, a little more chaotic. Whereas once you get north of Energy Park Drive, north of the railroad tracks here, you get to North St. Anthony Park, which is like truly just something special right here. Big fan of like this intersection in particular. It's Carter Avenue and Como Avenue and where they intersect. It feels almost European to me. I've said that to many of the people that we help. It's kind of just undeniable, right? Like this almost looks like a different country to me in a way that I really, really love. One thing of note for people into libraries, into reading, etc., this St. Anthony Park Branch Library is one of the most beautiful libraries in Minnesota, if I do say so. It also has the largest collection of kids' books in all of the Twin Cities public libraries. And yeah, it just looks like a pretty cool piece of architecture, pretty cool kind of foundation to a neighborhood. But you also have things like another colossal cafe, shout out to it, a Finnish bistro, which is a really great spot as well, and just a few other little spots. Just kind of want to show you the vibe of it a little bit more. Another Frattallone's hardware store, love to have it, and yeah, it's just a really, really cool spot. So that's it for St. Paul for this list. And then we are hopping into Minneapolis. And I'm going to be a little more picky about the walkable neighborhoods in Minneapolis because there's a lot that might qualify by some people's standards as walkable in Minneapolis. But there are also some that are more walkable than others, right? And so I'm going to focus on those. But I guess a few things of note. One would be that this is Lake Street, okay? From all the way east to west on Lake Street, it's commercial, right? Just tons and tons and tons of commercial spaces all along Lake Street. You can get to the east on Lake Street, all the way over to the east in the Longfellow neighborhood, and it's commercial. And there's some really, really cool stuff there as well. And I would say anything close to this part of Lake Street, pretty supremely walkable, and there's a lot of really nice things to access there. Also, in particular, like Minnehaha Avenue, there's a lot going on there. So this would be a pretty good spot, but I don't think it would qualify as like the most walkable. Then getting over here into like the Powderhorn neighborhood and the Phillips neighborhood, you have this part of Lake Street, also like tons and tons and tons of commercial spaces and restaurants and things like that, all up and down Lake Street. And then also along 36th, there's some really great stuff as well. But I think that still sort of pales in comparison to what is like west of 35W and some of the more walkable areas over here. Nokomis, awesome neighborhood, not particularly walkable. Southwest Minneapolis, most of it is not that walkable, other than like hold for, you know, a few corners. And again, I just don't think it qualifies as like the most walkable sort of like cafe neighborhood or villagey feel or whatever. Those are the things that I'm kind of tapping into. And then another sort of like honorable mention that I'm not going to dive way into would be this part of Northeast, Lowry Avenue and Central Avenue. Eastside Food Co-op, tons of really good restaurants right here. Just this little strip in particular. But I tend to think a lot of Northeast, it would be more bikeable. It's a little just further apart and spread apart than some of these other neighborhoods that we're talking about. But there is a unique section down here. It's actually where our shop is. It is like a really great little like microcosm, like just super, super walkable right here. So Hennepin Avenue and University or 4th, etc. I'm gonna drop the little guy. It's a little bit more downtown-y feeling, right? You're really close to downtown, just down here. I'll bring him down here just so you can see. You got the bridge to downtown, here's downtown, across the river. And as you kind of head up into this neighborhood, which is probably going to be called a bunch of things by whoever you're talking to. Some people will call it Northeast Minneapolis. Some people will call it St. Anthony, Maine, as like the neighborhood St. Anthony, Maine. It is actually called Nicollet Island, but that's probably the least common name that will be used for this area because it's not actually part of the island. So you have places like Kramarchuk, which is like a Polish deli, a Ukrainian deli, something like that. It's basically both, depends on who you ask. And then heading this way, All Saints, really cool spot. A lot of this stuff has actually changed, and some of these have gotten filled in. There's some really cool stuff. It's a long-standing like liquor store, wine shop, but also like cheese shop and meat shop, where sort of the charcuterie side of things, and then a bunch of stuff right along here. This is where the shop is, in this building right here. And yeah, that seems really worth mentioning because we're lucky enough to have our office here, and it's extremely walkable. You're also maybe a block from a Lunds and Byerly's, again, grocery store, pretty huge in terms of, access and walkability and all that. So now we're jumping across the river here into downtown. And there are different levels of walkability in downtown. Downtown East is quickly expanding, quickly growing, but I would not call it the most walkable neighborhood. I've lived here pretty recently while this channel existed. It's nice, I really enjoyed it, but I don't think it qualifies as being particularly walkable. You have the likes of Nicollet Mall. Walkable, yes, but not really quite as complete as some of these other areas. And maybe I'm judging more harshly because there are things that exist that are so complete and so full. But yeah, there's a lot going on here, but it's more of like a destination, right? Less of where people are living and less condos. It's more hotels, right? And less condos and more the destination of things. All along Hennepin Avenue and First Avenue. I mean, I'll show you. You have First Avenue, the venue, famous First Avenue. Very cool venue, by the way. Worth checking out a show here. Across from that is the Target Center. It's where the Timberwolves play. It's the destination, right? Not a whole lot of condos even right nearby this. And then this is Hennepin Avenue. It's cool, right? It's definitely a cool spot, and you're very much in the city, but it's a bit more of like just a temporary place, right? Where people are not necessarily living quite as much in that section. So then I'm going to kind of zoom in on what is like the most walkable spot. I would say this is definitely one of the most walkable, probably one of the top 2 most walkable neighborhoods in Minneapolis, in Minnesota entirely. It's called North Loop. It's also known partly as Warehouse District, although that name has kind of passed, right? It's North Loop is very much what it's known as. And you can see the outline here, Mississippi River on the northeast, Hennepin Avenue on the southeast-ish. The southern border is basically like this highway, this kind of like mess of highway going on right here, to be honest. And then that's true of like the western border as well. And so you can kind of zoom in. You got Target Field I don't think of that as being particularly walkable or anything. It's pretty industrial and all that going on down here. You have the farmers market in that very, very western edge. It is a huge farmers market here, actually, and I would say very, very beloved as well. A lot going on. Very, very frequented by a lot of people. You can kind of see though, it's kind of just in that whole blend of highways and all that. And then if you get up more toward this like northeastern-ish northern part of North Loop along Washington, basically all the way from the Great River Road to the highway here, or maybe even 6th, is where you really have like a level of walkability that is close to unparalleled. So we'll start over here around Hennepin in Washington. Another Whole Foods. I think the Whole Foods, if that wasn't there, the neighborhood would kind of lose a lot of its walkability. It would be more of like a destination, right? Which it certainly has a level of destination-ness, not a word, but it's like people go there, and even if you don't live in North Loop, you will likely end up in North Loop, if that makes sense, for some kind of dinner or some sort of celebration, because it's where a lot of the coolest restaurants and all that are in Minneapolis proper. So heading down here, you've got where basically this is Washington Avenue and 3rd Avenue. This is the Hewing Hotel. Fun fact, this is actually the building that my college was in, IPR. It's not anymore. Right across from that is Deja Vu. Still there. It's kind of weird. Kind of weird that has managed to hang on in a neighborhood that has like kind of exploded in growth. As you get onto the other side of the train tracks here, it's just like a bridge. You're at like 5th and Washington. Again, another really, really unique corner with a lot of accessibility and all that. And you will see probably more people walking on any given day in North Loop than just about anywhere. It's not only walkable, it's like actually actively used as like a walkable area. Okay, and I know that's like maybe a weird way of phrasing that, of putting that, but there's one thing for somewhere to be walkable, like, oh, one could walk there. Maybe Highland Park is a decent example of that. St. Paul, Highland Park, St. Paul, it could be extremely walkable and a person could walk there and do most of their errands, but like most people are driving, okay? Whereas North Loop, you will see a lot of people walking around here. So just continuing down Washington to kind of give you a sense of things. A lot of these buildings were once warehouses, are now condos or apartments with like restaurants and things on the main floor. And yeah, they've just really managed to build something pretty awesome down here over the years. So shout out to the Spy House, shout out to Spy House in general, great coffee shop. And then kind of scooting back here, there's a few things in this kind of northern part. It's a beautiful, beautiful area along the river here. Some really, really cool condos. And I'm gonna go here in particular, which is North First. You have the Itasca Lofts right here. The Acme Comedy Club right here, like legendary comedy club. And I would say it is the comedy club in Minneapolis and St. Paul, to be honest. And you can see here, pretty true warehouse district feels, right? Where it like is actually old warehouses that have been converted, but then also mixed in with, you know, with newer construction and things like that. The cool, like the Creamet Lofts, very, very cool buildings here. Continuing down here, again, giving you a sense of things. And First Street in particular, you're 2 blocks off of Washington, which is where a lot of that stuff is. And then if I were to go to, let's say, 2nd Street and 3rd Avenue, this is kind of another one of those cores where there's like more just kind of conveniences, etc. And if I drop the guy here at 1st Street North and I think 3rd Avenue, which is just 2 blocks from what is the Hewing Hotel now, you have another corner where it's just kind of crazy how much it's exploding. And we are going to head, I guess, north on 3rd. a lot of this area is now like completely filled in with commercial spaces. Obviously, you can see a fair bit of construction going on, but some really, really good restaurants that have popped in here and some really interesting spots. We're coming up on a place called Berlin. It's kind of like a venue, jazz-ish, fusion-y venue, cool drinks, very cool atmosphere. And then right here at First and Second, this is now a place called Porzana, like really, really highly regarded steakhouse. That might even be almost derogatory just to call it a steakhouse, but it's awesome. Low-key, one of my favorite buildings that has yet to be completed is this, I don't know, a commutator building. I've always loved the architecture on that. It's been in progress for a very long time. And then, yeah, we'll just kind of bop back up here. Doesn't look like this really anymore. It's much more complete. A couple blocks up here. I got my fiance's engagement ring at a place called Filigree. Really cool, like vintage rings and things like that. And then we're back on Washington, which again, very much like one of the most like sort of important streets to the North Loop neighborhood. Ton of stuff going on there. Yeah, I could spend probably longer just talking about North Loop, but we've got things to talk about. Next up, I'm going to talk about Loring Park, just briefly. Loring Park has a lot of condos and also apartments, but it is pretty wonderfully walkable. And there's Loring Park, which is a beautiful park, and some really cool spots as well. Things that are popping up. Guy Noi in particular is a Laotian restaurant. It's really, really good. It is pretty much always packed. And this little street along Harmon Place is, I don't know, just a beautiful area, beautiful architecture along here, and it also obviously overlooks Loring Park, which is another very, very beloved park. It's where Minneapolis Pride Festival happens, and yeah, it's just a really great place. You can, bike or walk through the park, but I know we're not talking about parks. We're talking about conveniences. One of the reasons that I think it does kind of qualify is along Hennepin Avenue. Here's where the Lunds and Byerly's is. If you were to head southwest on Hennepin, it basically curves up right past the actual park, right past the Walker Art Center, and this is where the Spoon Bridge and Cherry is. Be shocked if you have not seen a picture of this somewhere. In researching Minnesota, the Spoon sure does come up. It's fun. It's fun to see, it's fun to drive by. It's visible from the street right here, but it's kind of crazy to walk up to it because it is massive. Walker Art Center, very cool. The Sculpture Garden is more or less part of the Walker Art Center, but it is public and just available. And then just on the other side of 94 here, where the roads get particularly strange, at Hennepin and Lyndale, you have Hennepin going diagonally, Lyndale going directly north to south. This area in total is often referred to as Uptown, right? Like this whole space over here. I'll click on Uptown. You'll see that it's actually pretty small compared to that. But people will often call South Uptown, East Bedamikoska, all the way into Lowry Hill, and even sometimes Whittier. They'll call that all Uptown. I'm not like being like a neighborhood cop. I'm not like being like, yo, you have to call it this. I don't really care, but just so you know, this is technically what Uptown is. And people very often will say that Lyndale Avenue is Uptown. So before I get to actual Uptown, there is this little area right here. It's known as the Wedge, basically where it is this wedge shape. And along Lyndale, along Hennepin, tons of great stuff. So I'll show you Hennepin. In particular, there's a Spy House. It's great. Shout out to this tow truck driver. This Spy House is really cool. Great place to hang, great place to grab coffee. And you have even things like Valvoline, like an oil change place, which again, I think adds to the walkability of things, like sort of the usability of a neighborhood. And Autopia, again, a car repair place, and some of these little like strip mall-y spots. And then if I were to hop over to the Lyndale side of things, you have the Wedge, which is a food co-op, not the name of the neighborhood. The Wedge, really, really nice food co-op. It's been around for a very, very long time. I go in there fairly often because I don't live too far from the Wedge. It is just colloquially called the Wedge. The co-op is called the Wedge. The neighborhood is also called the Wedge. But yeah, you can see, you know, liquor store, speedway. There's just a level of walkability along this that is pretty good. But when you get further south along Lake Street, I already mentioned Lake Street, it's a very, very walkable spot. Into basically there's two neighborhoods that I'm just going to talk about kind of simultaneously. One is called Lynn Lake, which is, again, pretty small. It's just this little guy right here. It even overlaps with the uptown boundary ever so slightly. There's also the Lyndale neighborhood, but that's only this. So anyway, it gets a little convoluted, and which might be why people just refer to all of this as uptown. So in the interest of that, just breaking it down more specifically, you have Lake and Hennepin. Lake and Hennepin is not at its best right now. Lake and Hennepin has seen a lot of businesses close, a lot of the big businesses close. And there were a lot of big corporate stores that closed during COVID, during the George Floyd, and they are still closed. Those buildings are still closed. I'm wildly bullish on this neighborhood on the whole because I think it's some of the coolest real estate. I think it's some of the most desirable land in all of Minneapolis, but it's not at its best right now. So, you know, timestamp this video. It's like February 6th, 2025 as I'm making this. This is all going to look quite a bit different. This image is only from 2022. It's 2025 right now. It doesn't look like this right now. I would say actually the good thing is it looks a little nicer than this, than what I'm seeing right here. But for sure, still not at its very, very peak. And at its peak, it was really something pretty special. It does still have a Lunds and Byerly's right here, which does lend to its walkability. And as you get a little further down this way, just more restaurants, you know, tons of restaurants throughout this area that a lot of them are still open and still really busy if you drive by them today. So the biggest thing, probably one of the biggest reasons I'm bullish on the neighborhood in the long term is that it is directly adjacent to two different lakes, in particular Lake of the Isles and Bedeh-Makaska, which are some of the most beautiful places in Minneapolis proper. And so I think the long tail will show that people want to be there, businesses want to be there, people want to go there, and I think we will see that all kind of hit its stride again. Majors and Quinn is still there. It's one of the holdouts. It's been there the longest. It's a really, really great bookstore. And yeah, I like the area so much that I just hope that people start to, you know, invest in the area, etc. And even with all that said, it still remains one of the most walkable neighborhoods in Minneapolis. It just, if I didn't say something about it, even if I did say something about it, people will probably say like, well, I've heard that things have changed. It's true, things have changed. For example, this Target no longer exists there. Again, this is 2022 Street View. This looks quite a bit different these days. And I would say on the whole, I think it looks a little bit nicer than it did in 2022. And then if we move from Lake and Hennepin down to Lake and Lyndale, again, this is another corner that is just really busy pretty much all the time. Businesses tend to come and go. I swear this building, this one space has been, I don't know, 20 different businesses since I started living, since the first time I lived in Uptown in like the mid 2000s. You have Rectangle Pizza, like Detroit style pizza, very highly regarded, super good. I don't do that anymore. And then Up Down is like an arcade bar, pretty cool spot there as well. Shout out to Caffrey's, been around for a very long time, sandwich shop. Late night sandwich shop too. Not as much anymore, huh? Closing, oh yeah, 2:30 a.m. Yeah, late night sandwich shop. Then we go this way a little bit, and yeah, you got Jungle Theater. That has been around for freaking forever. And this place used to be an old theater. It's now Lynn Lake Brewery. It almost looks closed, but it is not closed. Can confirm that it is still open. Maybe it was actually being worked on. I don't know, overhauled at that point. Again, 2023 images now, and yeah, just some really cool spots, beloved places. This VFW's been around for forever, and as most VFWs have, I suppose. But yeah, it just sort of continues where this core is super walkable. Then I do want to hop over to Whittier here. So the Whittier neighborhood, I know I said east to west. Sorry, that was west to east. My bad. In particular, this strip of Nicollet Avenue is what's known as Eat Street. And there are a ton of really good restaurants here. The reason that I think it doesn't qualify for like full, super walkable is it doesn't really have any like traditional grocery stores in that regard. It has really great restaurants, some that have been around for forever, that are still doing their thing and absolutely crushing it. Quang in particular is like a pho spot. Some of the best pho in Minneapolis proper for sure. It's right there. There's a Spy House down here. I think there was an Aldi at one point. Good grocer? Okay, there is a small grocery store here. A nice asset to the neighborhood. Whittier definitely would qualify as walkable to a lot of people. Yeah, shout out to this building and the Copper Hen and stuff. Really cool spot there. The Spy House is right here. Heading out of Whittier now. We've only got a couple left, and I'm saving what is often like the most cherished like gem for last. But that's also because it's the most southwest. So not to hold out on y'all. So Kingfield. I think the Kingfield neighborhood is a really nice blend of walkability, what I often call like the cafe neighborhood, right? Where you can walk to a corner, go to a really nice coffee shop, an unbelievable restaurant, like a bakery, something like that. There is not a grocery store within the boundaries, which I know I said is like a big deal. There's some very close to it, just across 35W, and it's not like you have to like walk across the highway. There's the Seward Community Co-op, so that's like 2 blocks outside the border. I think that counts personally. And yeah, there's a Kowalski's not too far this way. And so while it doesn't necessarily check that box like perfectly well, I think it has so much to offer in terms of some really great restaurants and cafes and things like that. So in particular, you have the corner of 38th and Nicollet that has a lot of really great stuff. And things that have been around for a very long time, as well as some newer places that are really like catching some fire, right? So Petit Leon in particular, it used to be Blackbird Cafe, it's Petit Leon, very cool, very beloved. A hardware store, a Nicollet Ace hardware store. I think it's still an Ace. Either way, it's still a hardware store. You have Nighthawks right here, and you can just kind of see, right? Like, very cool. Meat Market, 5 Watt Coffee. Shout out to 5 Watt. That's probably the 6th coffee shop I've said that to now. It's really good though. Okay, and then we're backing out of the 38th and Nicollet. You can see over here on 38th and Grand, a smaller corner, but it has some staples that are beloved. Victor's 1959 Cafe, a Cuban restaurant. We don't have a ton of Cuban restaurants in Minnesota, but this one has been around for a very long time, crushes. It's Steve from the team. It's like one of his favorite restaurants, if not his favorite restaurant in all of the Twin Cities. You got vintage stores, Tapas, Good Times Pizza, record store, butcher shop, right? That's cool. Very useful little corner there. Just across, I'm gonna count it just across from Lindale from the Kingfield neighborhood is Kaluna. It's a Laotian restaurant. It's really good. It's a beautiful place. The food is really great as well. Very cool ambiance. To be able to walk to that is pretty sweet. Then down here, you have Lowbrow. Love this little strip where like Lowbrow is just kind of like a classic comfort food, American food, hamburger restaurant really. And all up and down Nicollet, there's just like little spots where there's some very highly regarded restaurants. And then at 46th and Grand, another small spot here, but you have Patisserie 46, which is really good. Had a client, a friend, if you will, move here. They had lived in France for some time, and they were like, I haven't had that good of like French bakery items since being in France. I'd say that's pretty high praise. And across from Tap Society, you have Ina, which is a Latin American restaurant. So backing out of there, that's Kingfield. A lot of really nice amenities within the Kingfield area, and also just like beautiful homes. I think it's what a lot of people are envisioning when they're thinking about living in the city proper, right? Cool homes, full of character, walkable, bikeable. There's bike routes. There's just a cool variety of places, and just a really nice bit of character. Then last up is what is truly a beloved neighborhood. And then last up, I'm going to move over to what is really a beloved neighborhood, sometimes like a proper like hyped neighborhood, where when people are telling us they want to live there, it's like they've been told that it's, you know, like the promised land, like it's like the coolest place. And in fairness, it's very nice. And you can see here, it's called Linden Hills, and it's really unique in that it is walkable. The homes are beautiful. There's a combination of old homes and like literally brand new homes because it has that level of pull. It has that draw to it. But you can see that it's also just to the south of Bede-Makaska and just to the northwest of Lake Harriet. Those two things just lend it to not only being a really great place that you can visit those things, but they also block it off from like the rest of the metro, the rest of the city proper anyway. And then in between the two lakes is actually the Lakewood Cemetery, beautiful cemetery, kind of weird to say, but it is beautiful. And those three things combined kind of give Linden Hills this buffer from the rest of the city, the rest of the cities, that is pretty unique. It's almost like an island, but really it's like very villagey. It feels like a village. And it's undeniable in that regard. They really lean into sort of like community and community events because it's so little. And I think it's so manageable in that regard. I'm going to do it. I'm going to shout out another cafe. My favorite cafe is Cafe Ceres. I think it's my favorite. Big fan. I like their coffee more than anywhere else. That at like 44th and Beard, very, very cool little spot right here. Upton and 43rd. Very, very villagey feel going on right here. Some really great restaurants as well. Coffee shops again here. And it's kind of just crazy how much people want to live right here, right? This is a very unique spot in that regard, where people will limit their search to such a small area to be close to that. I think that there's almost nowhere in the city proper quite like that. I can think of a few places in the suburbs where people are that dialed in, but there's just not that much of it. And again, some beautiful homes, 42nd and Upton or so. You can see there's a kind of a cool blend of old homes, original homes. Go down this way a little bit. Actually sold one of these. I sold this house. Really beautiful newer homes, right? Just amongst all of these older homes. And keep in mind, this is a 2019 screenshot or shoot. And keep in mind, this is a 2019 image, and a lot of newer homes have gone into this area since 2019. I don't know how many, like offhand, but a lot of these older homes have gotten scraped and replaced by newer homes since 2019. Now we're in 2022. I think you might start to see some of this. A few more newer homes popping up here. But yeah, there still is very much a village feel. Even if there's brand new 2025 homes being built there, reason they're being built there is because of that village feel. And so people are, I would say, are fighting very, very hard to maintain that as best as possible. Another hardware store, of course. And then, yeah, obviously the lakes, the parks, That's really, really, really something special. And so if you want help moving to Linden Hills or any of these other spots, hit us up to thetwincities.com and we'll crush it for you. See you in the next one.